All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And Ron, welcome, man. This is so awesome to have you here.
So excited to be here. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks you so much.
Oh, this is going to be good because you and I were talking before we hit the record button, and this is so classic that we just made this discovery because the guy who was the catalyst for me doing this whole dang podcast in the first place, Brad Costanzo, we just found out was the guy who originally introduced you and I 11 years ago. And you
That's right.
You found the email and put your hand where the email where Brad introduced you and I.
Yeah, I searched Yahoo, searched Brad Kevin Thompson, and there we go.
Yeah.
Title was JV Introduction. How about that?
That is awesome. So that, I mean, man, that was when we were running two completely different businesses, both of us.
Yes. Times changed for sure.
That's right. And so Brad, shout out to you, man. And I appreciate you. And I was just telling Ron, and I tell so many of the guests that I've interviewed that, Brad was the one that suggested, Kevin, for a guy like you that values relationships so much, man, hosting a podcast would be the perfect thing for you. And he wasn't kidding. Here we are right here recording episode 155. And this has been hands down the most rewarding thing I've done in my 27 years as an entrepreneur. And I love having these conversations. And so, Ron, what I'd like to do is just kind of start off by turning it over to you so that you can share a little bit of your background, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you get to do, and just kind of, we'll set a little bit of context and let everybody know who is Ron Reich and what's Ron all about.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, my name is Ron Reich, and these days I primarily work as a business growth and marketing strategist. And my real ideal people that I work with are really mission-driven coaches and experts that are typically past kind of the startup stage. They're doing like multiple six figures, let's say, in revenue. And my real specialty is helping them go from that lower six-figure level to seven figures, really through a combination of really launches, high ticket offers, as well as evergreen marketing systems, as well as a few other things. But that's kind of like the real thing that I'm currently focused on. And one thing that I'm kind of known for in my little pocket of the internet universe is that I've been fortunate to be the kind of behind the scenes secret weapon for a lot of really successful businesses. A few of my people I've worked with include Ryan Levesque, Todd Herman, Denise Duffield Thompson. I worked with Hay House Publishing for a little bit as well. So I have quite a few kind of bigger powerhouse brands that I've worked with. But really my main focus is really helping those emerging entrepreneurs go from 6 to 7 figures. And prior to that, I worked as a lawyer for a couple of years, and that was not the best vocation for me. And then I ended up getting involved in the online marketing space, or at the time, this was back in 2004, it was the information marketing or the direct marketing space, which I know you're quite familiar with, Kevin. And I had a few different businesses in a variety of niches. I actually launched 50 of my own products. And then one thing led to another, which we'll talk about on this in this interview. I ended up getting more involved into helping entrepreneurs grow their space, which is what I'm currently doing.
Awesome. So, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of a picture of who you are and what you do and stuff, I'm going to shift gears. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person? And Ron, I saw that grin on your face come up, and I'm just excited to hear your story, your experience around this, and give you the opportunity to honor somebody who's had such a profound impact on your life.
Yeah, there's definitely been more than it. That's like all successful entrepreneurs. There's quite a few on that list.
Yeah.
But the one kind of when we were chatting about it, about me being on the show, and kind of like, we were just kind of, you had some questions about who it might be or whatnot. And yeah, there's definitely one person that is kind of like there's like 1A, 1B, 1C. I think 1A is probably, I do have a person in mind for that, would you like to know who it is, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got me.
Yeah. So definitely, my 1A, it really has to be Ryan Levesque, who I mentioned. He's definitely, it's funny. So I was like, there's this, how do you say this? You can always go back to, the truth of the matter is that we, how do I say this? Like, okay, so if you keep going back, it can be a number of things. Because obviously, if your life didn't happen exactly if our lives didn't happen exactly the way they happened, right, we wouldn't be where we are. So for example, I ended up going to the University of Redlands. That's where I went to college. And the fact that I went to University of Redlands had a huge trajectory on my life generally. And I wouldn't have gone to Redlands, to that university, if one of my teachers at the time, when I was teaching summer school, if he didn't mention that his wife was teaching at the University of Redlands. That was like, oh, that kind of put that school on my radar, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then point I'm getting at is that you can kind of keep, and hey, it is actually a true statement that if I was not in that classroom at that time, I wouldn't have gone to Redlands, and I wouldn't have done this, and it would have brought me here. But at some point, you can kind of keep going back forever, basically. Like if my great grandfather didn't, meet my great grandmother, did it, many moons ago, then I wouldn't be here, right? But anyways, at some point, you have to kind of like do a cutoff, right, and decide, okay, who's like, when did my life really change? And really, for me, it's definitely Ryan Levesque is the person who really had that profound impact on me. And I'll tell you, I'll just kind of give you the quick story of how we got connected. And the reason why Ryan has been so instrumental is because he's really impacted me really in multiple ways, actually on multiple different businesses, really throughout my entire online career. And I just learned so much from him. And I've met so many people because of him. He's kind of like in a lot of ways, the epicenter, the sun that a lot of the things revolve around on. So I met Ryan. Oh, this is interesting. I actually got connected to Ryan for the first time in 2012. The same year we got connected.
Uh-huh.
At the time, I had a business in the dating and relationship space. And that business was doing well. It was doing about $500,000 a year. I had a partner at the time. It was an overall successful business. And at that time, let me do some math. Was the business, that was 2012. Yeah, the business it did better the year before that. It was in a dip. It wasn't like struggling, but it was in a dip. It didn't do as much revenue in that year in 2012 as it did the year before, for example.
Okay.
Anyways, and I was really into at the time this guy who I'm sure you know, Glenn Livingston.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at the time, I was really into Glenn Livingston. I had one of his courses a while ago, but it was really complicated. He would use, for those of you who don't know, Glenn Livingston, he is the legitimate godfather. He is the guy who kind of invented the idea of using surveys to learn about your customers and improve your marketing. And he came up with this very elaborate system for this that involved like statistics, and it was very next level. This would have been around 2005, 2006, 2007. Anyways, I really wanted to learn his system. And at the time, he did not have, or he offered, like on his website, he basically didn't offer one-on-one coaching. I think he said if I'm not mistaken, there's like on his website, he's like, oh, he offered one-on-one coaching, and it was really expensive for me at the time. It was like $2,000 a month. But he was like sold out. He wasn't even like taking clients, but he had two sub coaches. Subcoach number one was this guy named Ryan Levesque. Subcoach number two was this guy named Jack Bourne. I'm pretty sure Jack Bourne was subcoach number two. And anyway, so I just kind of randomly did some Googling, and I found Ryan's website, and I emailed him I set up an email, and I was like, yeah, I'm interested in doing one-on-one coaching with you. Do you take on clients? And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. And then this was back in 2012, he ended up coaching me. Okay. And he mainly coached me, really at the beginning, he coached me really on that business, on my business in the dating and relationship space. And then we actually, credit Ryan number one is I just learned so much from him, and he really made me a much better marketer. And I was already quite good. Like I was like an experienced copywriter, but I just learned a lot of next level things from him, especially when it comes to surveys and funnels. At the time, he was known as like the funnel specialist. So really, I learned a lot from it. He really helped me with that business. Then we ended up launching a new business in a completely different market, which was the dog training market. Okay. And we launched that business from scratch. And I had never done that before. He really helped me through that, which is something that was really new and exciting for me. And so to continue the story, I ended up being fortunate enough we talked for an hour every week. It ended up being from 2012 to like the middle of 2016. Basically, for every week, we talked for an hour for 4 years. So I was very fortunate. I probably, I joke that I could probably like get some of those recordings and sell them on eBay for thousands of dollars, because there was some real gold in those conversations, especially if you look at where Ryan has where he's landed these days. But anyways, so what ended up happening was I had my dating business, which I wanted to get out of that. That's why I started this business in the dog training space. And then this was in kind of late 2014, early 2015. And this was right when Ryan started to really get some momentum. He really was just a behind the scenes guy. Like when I first met him, he had quite a few big clients. He would help them. He would even do a done for you implementation, but he would also, most of his revenue, as far as I know, was really from consulting, basically consulting people on marketing, surveys, quizzes, and all that fun stuff. But then in 2014, that's when he wrote his book, the book Ask, which ended up becoming a nationally best-selling book. And then it was really late 2014, really early 2015. That's when Ryan started to really get some momentum and really start to blow up, so to speak. And then he ended up launching a mastermind at the end of 2014, early 2015. And he needed someone to coach his mastermind members. Okay. And so he asked me to be one of the people that coached his mastermind members. And so that was kind of my first, it ended up being good. It ended up being a little bit of a slippery slope. So first he asked me if I would coach his mastermind members. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And he explained to me, like, why this was a good idea and how he wanted me to do it. And that was cool. And so my plan was, I'll coach the mastermind members. That'd be cool. Then I still have like my other businesses. I was really focused on the dog training business at the time. Okay. And then I ended up, about a couple months later, this is kind of interesting. This would have been right around February. I started coaching the mastermind members. This was December of 2014. And then it was, or that's when we agreed to do it. I think the first coaching calls took place like in January. And then it was around February where I don't know exactly how this came up, but I told him, like, I was like, I can actually help you with some more stuff like in your business. And I think actually there was actually somebody else who was working with Ryan who ended up getting hired by Ryan to work like, and I was kind of jealous of that. So I was like, oh, what's going on here? I felt like kind of like, hey, like I want to work with Ryan too. I don't want to miss the Ryan rocket, as we called it at that time. So anyways, then I ended up working as essentially his, like, I don't know, like I managed his email list essentially. I was like his email marketing specialist essentially. Okay. that was like my essential the position. You know, the study people are running email lists. That's kind of like that's what I did. Anyways, then I got more involved, kind of like working with him on the business. And then it was a couple months later, he had a launch. This is like one of those like interesting moments in time where this was April of 2015. He had a launch that was like not going so well for a variety of reasons. And I was kind of just doing some stuff in the background. And it just so happened that on one of our coaching calls, it came up. I'm really struggling. At this point, my dog training business was not going very well. I was very leveraged. I was like investing a lot of money that I didn't have on advertising because I really wanted to make that business work. And then my other business, my dating business, because I was so focused on, let's just say, because I was not so focused on that business was not doing so well. And so that came up in one of our coaching calls. At the same time, his launch wasn't going so well. And then he sent me a message. He's like, hey, hey, maybe you want to come in and manage my launch for me. And I was just like, oh, sure, I'll do it. I was like, hey, I need the money. So yeah, sure. I'll do whatever. Then I agreed to manage that launch. And then one thing led to another. I pretty soon after that became his full-time marketing director. This was in 2015, from 2015 to the beginning of 2017. That's essentially how long I was his full-time marketing director. Okay. So I'm excited to continue the story, but let me stop there, or else this interview is going to be, it's not going to be an interview, it's going to be a monologue. So I will,
but that's totally cool. That is totally cool. Because I want you to keep going, and then I've got a question that is already at the top of my mind, but right now is not the time to ask it. And so you just keep going, Ron.
Okay, so the monologue will continue. So
the monologue will continue. Yes.
So there's like kids in the background. Can you still hear it?
I don't hear.
You're okay. Okay, good. So anyway, so so then one thing led to another. I ended up becoming and really for those next 2 years, I became Ryan's full-time marketing director.
Okay.
And it was really so that was my first kind of step to really get into the kind of the online marketing world. Mm-hmm. And at the time he did have even actually before this, he had this it was a membership. It was a paid Facebook group. It was a membership that took place essentially in a Facebook group. And in that group, I wrote a lot of content in that group. I wrote a lot of posts. I was kind of famous for these like long, really detailed posts. And I kind of got a little bit of that was my first time being quote unquote visible kind of in that world, in kind of the online marketing space, if that makes sense. And then, so that was kind of one thing that and I was really afraid to really I didn't become a consultant. I was really nervous about that. I didn't really, and I was also working for Ryan at the time. So there's kind of like that conflict there, but anyways, that was a thing. And then one of the other really big thing, or a couple of the really big things that happened was throughout the entire time I was, ever since he launched that mastermind, which it was in early 2015, I went to all of his mastermind events, and he had this amazing mastermind. It was called the Elite Mastermind. And some of those people in there, I know you've been in some amazing masterminds, are still some of my closest friends. It was an amazing group. He did 3 events a year that were in Austin. And looking back, I mean, I thought it was cool at the time. Like looking back, how do I say this? I did not appreciate at the time how fortunate I was to be able to be in those rooms. Okay. Because it was so 2 things. I was working with Ryan, and I was known for essentially being Ryan's best student, his little marketing genius in the corner. So I had some kind of good positioning, right? And everybody in at those meetings, they were all players. Most of them were doing 7 figures, multiple 7 figures. And there were times, I remember one time I was at a group, I was like, oh, this guy has a $10 million business. This guy has a $10 million business. It was just it was it was an amazing group. And I ended up going to those. So two big things, kind of a networking aspect, I guess I should say, is that, so I went to all of those mastermind meetings for, I don't know if I missed one from, I think as long as he had the mastermind, he did 3 meetings a year. So it would be the years of 2015, 2016, and 2017. I don't know if I went to all of them in 2017. I might have only went to the last one. Anyways, so I was very fortunate to be in those rooms and just like kind of like build those, not just like build those relationships, but also to have kind of that being kind of an authoritative, not authoritative, but to have a little bit of a, being a little bit of a position of authority in some ways.
Yep. Yep.
And the other big thing from a relationship standpoint was he ended up doing a really big affiliate launch in the middle of 2016. And this was like, and he was, cause he was pretty well known at the time. And so, he was able to get like a lot of, really, really, really big players on board. And I was essentially I was his marketing director. And as part of that job, I was essentially his affiliate manager.
Okay.
So I was basically able to build relationships with all of these like big players that ended up, promoting Ryan. So that was kind of like, so obviously that was really, really beneficial for me. Then kind of flashing forward, I ended up, ending the agreement, and that's a couple actually. So it's funny when the 3, and I'll come back to this, but, or how do I say this? This will come up later, but 2 other really important people who I met, there are many, but 2 of the other really important people that I met really through Ryan were, Selena Sue, who I mentioned, and Todd Herman, who I also mentioned. Those are 2 people that I met specifically, that I met them at Ryan Levesque mastermind, at those mastermind events. So anyways, kind of flashing forward a little bit, in beginning of 2017, I decided to me and Ryan, we mutually ended our engagement, and I ended up deciding to branch on my own and become a marketing consultant. So, of course, like, I'll give you one specific thing, and I'll just kind of get the general story is that, so after I was kind of on my own, I remember this was February 2017, and I actually did have like 2 clients at the time. So I was literally making like $5,000 a month. I was like not really in a good place. So what do you do when you need to get clients? You call people up, like you call up people, and you ask them if they want to be your clients, you ask them for referrals. And, so one of the first people I called up was actually Selena Sue, she was at that point, we still are really good friends. And she was we had a good connection at the time. And so she really went out of her way to really, like, she introduced me to some amazing people who ended up becoming some of my first kind of bigger clients. Okay. And then a couple months later, me and Todd Herman got back together, and I ended up essentially becoming his kind of marketing director for kind of about the second half of 2017. And the reason I'm saying that is, the reason why I'm saying those 2 specifically is because as a consultant, even to this day, a huge percent, pretty much, or a good percent, I don't know the exact thing, a good percentage of people that end up becoming like my clients that join my mastermind are people that they know me through my association with either Ryan or with Selena or with Todd. Those are kind of 3 of the kind of big people. And so again, but it all comes back to Ryan, because if it wasn't for Ryan, I wouldn't have met Selena. I wouldn't have met Todd, most likely. So it's like, when I think about all of these things, it's like, not only did I learn just to kind of recap, I learned how to become just like a really good marketer, like a good funnel, like a funnel specialist. Then I ended up through working as Ryan's marketing director, that's when I got into learning how to do like bigger launches. That's when I really learned like the affiliate game. That's where I learned specifically on working with entrepreneurs and how to help coach them, and I kind of was able to build those skills. And then, of course, I developed all these amazing relationships and all this amazing visibility and credibility that really did the impetus of that. What were things that I got from being in Ryan's world.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, obviously I showed up, I did the work, but there's like that part of me where it's like, I was really lucky, like being in the right place at the right time. Like I was very fortunate that I was essentially his number one student. And I was really interested, I was really ambitious, and I was really motivated. And I was lucky that he, invited me to come to his events. And I was lucky that, he thought of me as the person that could be a good marketing director for him or whatnot. And this was right when he was kind of really blowing up. So yeah, that's like where it's kind of where it's like, I mean, it's kind of, that's where it's like, if somebody this is a little bit facetious, but if somebody were asking me, well, Ron, how could I model your success? How could I do what you do? I was like, well, you have to just meet Ryan Levesque and become his marketing director. No, that's not, it's, not exactly that, obviously, but yeah, but that's pretty much the entire, I guess, to kind of finish things off, I guess I should say. So I ended up, my marketing consulting business launched in early 2007 or 17. And yeah, it's 6 years later. I have my own amazing mastermind. I've had many 7-figure case studies myself. I'm actually known as being kind of like one of the best, if not best, marketing and business coaches in my segment of the coaching industry. So yeah, can't complain.
Yeah. Man, so Ron, that was awesome. I have never heard that whole story before like that.
No one really has told it. I never told it in that kind of granular detail. I've told parts of it in other contexts, but not kind of all the details.
That is really, it's interesting because, I met Joe Polish all the way back in 1997, when at the time I owned a cleaning and restoration company, and he was serving that industry. And of course, there's been so much water under the bridge since then. And Joe and I have, on a number of occasions, we've talked about, like, well, what would have happened if you and I had never met? Because so many, that was the catalyst for so many more things, just like you just shared. And Joe's comment to me is that, well, Kevin, he said, you were hungry, you were looking, you were going to show up the way that you showed up anyways. If you didn't find me, you would have found somebody else, and stuff would have, and which there's truth to that.
I do believe that for sure.
But I'll tell you, I look back at the history and the experience that I've had, and I'm like, I'm really glad that it happened the way that it did. And
for sure, yeah, for absolutely.
I'm sure you have that same exact feeling. And you had this relationship with Ryan, and through that, you really got to develop your own skill set. While simultaneously making these relationships where people who saw you doing that and be like, man, I bet you can help me too, And so it just kind of kept things going and stuff. And now here you are in a place where you're just world class at what you do, and
that's right. Yeah.
got a lot of people behind you who have experienced what you've done firsthand. And so, like, now they just like, yeah, if you need help with this, well, Ron's the guy, and
yeah, for sure.
So if you look, and this is the question I love asking. So, if you look at, because you've mentioned, you've mentioned Ryan, you've mentioned, through Ryan, being able to meet people like Selena and Todd. And of course, these people have become immensely successful as well. And
for sure.
You look at just these 3 relationships that you've touched on here today. If you look at any one of those 3 relationships and look back and just, think about what is an example of something that came from one of those 3 relationships where you had this massive impact that would have never been possible had you not met or had the relationship with any one of those three people?
You're talking like what's the impact, or like the impact on me or on other people? I guess that's my
On
question.
other people, that together with you and them, because of that relationship, you were able to have this impact, and
Okay, gotcha.
it would have never happened without that relationship.
Yeah, I would say a really big one is that um so with working with Selena,
Okay.
she I really helped her do her I really mentored her a lot when it comes to doing big affiliate launches. These
Okay.
days, she is a super world class expert on that in her own right. But the first time, which this would have been, I think, in 2000, it was. In fact, the first big one she did was in 2017, and then she did another big one. She kept doing bigger ones out, but her first real big ones were 2017 and then 2018, and I really did help her do that. And as a result of her doing these bigger, like million and multi-million dollar launches, she was able to just really scale her impact on the amount of people that she was able to influence.
Yeah.
She like by now there's like been hundreds of people that have gone through that program that have made their own impact. Also, just like the amount of people she's reached through, like, the free content, which by now it's got to be, 50, 100,000 people. If you look at like the ripple effects about that. So I just think that the fact that, that I was instrumental in helping her have these bigger launches where she's able to really expand her reach and visibility. I think that would be a great example of kind of like that ripple
Yeah.
effect, that relationship with one person, how that can really, really lead to a bigger impact.
Yeah. I mean, that is such a perfect and amazing example. And that's why, when I, and like doing this podcast has really just caused me to just realize this and come to the realization that, when we do have these relationships that we, because of who we choose to serve, because who we choose to partner or collaborate or co-create with, that we do get to have this really huge impact that would have never transpired, that would have never took place if not for these relationships in our life.
Yeah, absolutely, for
And
sure.
one of the things that about hosting this podcast is, first of all, thank you for taking the time to share your story and your experience around this, but also, for the listeners, to just be able to hear from people like yourself, from other like-minded entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
just be able to be inspired to, like, what, man, I'm going to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in my own life. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's just, thank you so much for
Yeah.
the role that you played in helping deliver on that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, one thing I just really want to reiterate and emphasize is that I was kind of joking earlier about how, um, hey, the secret to being successful is meet Ryan Levesque and become his marketing director. But the truth of the matter is that, or like go to these amazing masterminds where you're able to build these connections and whatnot. But the thing I'll tell you, like, to give myself credit, Woody Allen says, 90% of success is showing up, right? And to my own credit, I did reach out to Ryan to see if he needed more marketing help. I did go to all of those mastermind events. Like, I prioritized spending like a month out of the year in Austin when I didn't really, in the scalding hot summer, so like I did actually show up at those events where, maybe, and as a result of me actually showing up at those events, for example, a lot of good things came out of that. But had I not done that, then obviously I wouldn't have gotten it. And that's one of the things that again, this is a longer conversation, is that other people can help us. We have our mentors, but I do think it is also true that we actually are 100% responsible for our own success, and
Absolutely.
that we ultimately are the ones that create our success. Other people can guide us. There's that saying that someone could like open the door for us, but we are the ones that actually have to walk through the door. So, and oftentimes it's amazing when you have people like Ryan Levesque and Selena Sue and Todd Herman opening doors for you. But again, I still did have to walk through those doors.
That's
So that's
right.
just one thing that I want to point out to everybody, is that like, like there's so many opportunities out there. There really are unlimited opportunities out there. And there's unlimited people amazing people that you could connect with that can really have transformational effects on your life. And it really is just about being willing to literally in this place, get off your butt and, get on a plane and like go meet these people, or do what it takes to get in front of these people. Of course, in the virtual world, these days with Zoom, you can do a lot just by literally staying on your butt. But the point I'm getting at is that it does require you to be that person that has that initiative. And if you do have that, you're going to build up $1 million network and much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron, for anybody listening to this, it's like, dang, Kev, I really like this Ron guy. I love the way he shows up. For anybody listening to this, how can they find more info on what you guys are doing and stuff?
Yeah, the best place to go would actually be to find me on Facebook, just on my personal Facebook profile.
Okay.
I post a lot of amazing content in there, which people tell me is more valuable than a lot of $2,000 courses. So I would just say, go to Facebook. If you type in Ron Reich, I would imagine I would show up pretty soon. And then just send me a direct message and let me know that you found out about me through Kevin, and I'll send you a special gift.
Awesome. Well, Ron, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today. Just share your own experience, and any last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap?
No, this is just, thank you so much. Ryan, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for changing my life. And this is awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ron. Really appreciate you, man.